Bob Brutke, your host for this brief historical tour of chemical engineering at The Ohio State University. Contrary to popular belief, I have not been here for 100 years. Thus, you will have to take my comments about the earlier days with more than just a few grains of salt as compared to those of more recent times. Even so, I think I'm reasonably well qualified to speak on the subject. After all, I've been an active member of the department for many years. In fact, I began before work started on the current building, Cofault Laboratories, almost 45 years ago. I'm standing in front of Derby Hall, one of OSU's earliest buildings, located on its scenic greenway known as the Oval. Sometime prior to 1920, it was known as Chemistry Building Number 3. Chemical engineering formally began in this building. Its history, however, goes back further. This was Chemistry Building Number 2. It replaced Chemistry Building Number 1. In those early days, it would appear that chemistry buildings often didn't last long enough to be formally named. Thus, its designation is Building Number 2. From the late 1890s to 1904, Ohio State University offered a BS in chemistry from the College of Engineering. Pioneer chemical engineering students took classes in this facility. In the 1902-1903 bulletin, the outline of the course in chemical engineering was listed for the first time. The degree was named Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. The first two recipients of this degree were Louis Benjamin Case and Arnold Carl Fielder in 1906. Ben Case worked at General Motors for 39 years, first in the chemical laboratories, later as part of the industrial hygiene program. He belonged to numerous societies, including ACS, ASM, and AICHE. He was known by his colleagues for his unorthodox use of the English language. Criticized for a paper in which it was noted, "There is no such word," he responded with a grin, "You mean there was no such word." Arnold Fielder spent his career with the federal government, first with the U.S. Geological Survey, later with the Bureau of Mines. During World War I, he was commissioned a major and directed research efforts in the gas mask section of the Chemical Warfare Service. He finished his career as Chief of Fuels and Explosives Division. He co-authored many papers on gas and fuel research. In 1936, he was elected president of the American Society of Testing Materials. He received honorary Doctor of Science degrees from the University of Alabama, 1936, and the Ohio State University, 1944, and was a recipient of the Joseph Sullivan and Lamé medals. When he died in 1966, he left $75,000 to endow a scholarship. Students then pretty much follow today's model, taking classes or cutting classes from the looks of this picture. Maybe it's just before class, since the teacher has also cut. Here they haven't even made it to class and are lounging around. And lastly, the students are conducting experiments in what was then a modern teaching facility. Unfortunately, the building caught fire soon after one such experiment and was completely destroyed. No direct connection has ever been established between the creation of the new chemical engineering program and the fire, although pictures of cigar-smoking faculty are surely suggestive. That building was replaced by Chemistry Building Number 3, later to become Derby Hall. Those of you familiar with the campus today will note the lack of a third floor. It has been suggested that life proceeded at a slower pace in those days. I'd like to know how anyone could proceed at a fast pace driving this old nag.
I've got an old mule and her name is Sal. 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's a mighty slow worker, but a good old pal. 15 miles on the Erie Canal. We've hauled some barges in our day, filled with people, coal and hay. 15 miles on the Erie Canal.
Notice all the women attending this chemistry course in 1907. I wonder if the women were required to sit in the front row. Probably they just were better students than their male counterparts as they are today. Curriculums are evolutionary. It has been said that a course is obsolete in 5 years. Our graduate school uses 8. Some ideas remain, with methods of teaching changing to make the material more compact. Take, for example, transport phenomena. It is interesting to note that there was a summer course back then, unit operations being taught today instead of shop. Early facilities used by Chemi were hardly commodious. The Industrial Chemistry Laboratory, for example, was a converted storeroom located in the basement, with one window that admitted little light and near to the heating system. This room was referred to for many years as the Black Hole of Calcutta. it's not the Prince of Darkness. It's not even Dracula. That's Dr. James Withrow, who headed up the Division of Chemical Engineering when it was part of chemistry and served as its first chair when it became a separate department in 1924. Doc, as he was known to students and faculty alike, was the very image of a stern headmaster. A teetotaler, he had other vices. Chemical engineering became a separate department in 1924, moving into the new chemistry building. 4 buildings in less than 30 years. This building was later named for Dr. McPherson after his death. That's Doc Withrow in the dark suit in the center during the dedication ceremony. A devout Christian, he held strong beliefs which often did not mesh with those of his students. One of his exams, for example, asked students to relate each of the 10 commandments to industry, a practice that caused some of them to believe that he had taken leave of his senses. Doc was a mineralogist, and during interview sessions in his office, enjoyed making students identify crystals or other specimens. He also disapproved of the ROTC and could be difficult when students needed his permission to enroll in military-related courses. The new building, McPherson Hall, featured a 6,000-foot unit operations and process development laboratory. Dr. Withrow never accepted the terminology of unit operations. However, he preferred the phrase machinery laboratory. Here's another view of the unit operations lab. After many years of accumulating stuff, one of the labs assigned to Chemie was nicknamed the Snake Pit of Stromboli. This was done by the Dean of the College of Engineering, Charles McQuigg. Ohio State chemical engineering graduates played a major role during World War II. OSU graduates, for example, headed up the synthetic rubber research at the 4 major rubber companies: Bill Burt, Howard Fritz, and Harry Warner at B.F. Goodrich, John Kakey at U.S. Rubber, George Lyon at Goodyear, and finally, Ernest Hanley at Firestone. Doc Withrow retired in 1948 after over 40 years at the helm of chemical engineering, first as division head when it was part of chemistry, and later as its first chair. He was followed by Joe Kofod, a graduate of the department and faculty member since the 30s. Joe, of course, knew only too well of Doc's idiosyncrasies, having worked with him for almost 20 years. He knew how to use diplomacy to achieve the desired results, as related in the following story from Joe's retirement banquet.
Among Joe's many outstanding qualities, one that I especially admire is his unfailing diplomacy. He got along in excellent fashion with Dr. James R. Withrow. I see that some of you know that was not always easy.
Joe's appointment as chair was like a breath of fresh air in the department, no pun intended. Their personalities couldn't have been more different. Doc was a teetotaler, Joe liked to drink. Doc abhorred tobacco, Joe virtually slept with a cigar in his mouth. Doc was stern and somewhat distant. Joe was outgoing and friendly. He made it a point to learn all the names of his students, their wives, and children. Doc was prim and proper. Joe liked to use colorful language at times. Here's another bit from the retirement banquet.
At this point, Dr. Kofalt called me into his office. As I recall our conversation, it went something like this. Kofalt barking. Baldner, do you know what's wrong? Baldner, intimidated. No, sir. When I talk with these interviewers, I try to impress them with my dignity and sobriety. Kofalt, groaning. I might have known it. One of them said you wouldn't say blank, even if you had a mouthful of it. Now get out of here and just be yourself. At my next interview, I put my feet on the table, told a few dirty jokes, and used an appreciable quantity of profanity. I was immediately offered a job. I shall therefore always be grateful to Dr. Kofalt for teaching me, among other things, that one must use profanity to succeed in life. Now there's an endorsement you don't very often get.
Joe used to smoke these particularly strong stogies and somewhat sweet, one of which, Algae, I used to refer to as rheology. I remember one time playing a trick on Joe in the 60s. I purchased a box of Eyeball cigars, one of the substitute brands, and gave them to every one of my students in room 205. We lit them up and literally filled the room with smoke. Not long afterwards, Joe stopped by and, thinking the room was on fire, rushed in. Confronted with a class of students puffing away, some of whom had turned green, he displayed a look of utter disbelief, wheeled around, and left the room. It should be noted, however, that he never smoked them himself in the laboratory. Or did he?
During Joe's pre- and postdoctoral work, there was a running serio-comic bone of contention between Dr. Withrow and Joe. Joe's work involved a large number of gas analyses run by the old ORSAT procedure.
Hempel.
That's what it says here, ORSAT. It wasn't clear to most of us what Doc's objective was, aside from getting Joe to stop smoking. We knew that he had someone's health in mind, but it wasn't clear whether it was Joe's or Doc's. The contention took the form of criticizing Joe's gas analyses on the basis that Joe's smoking introduced 3 sources of error into his research. The first was that the smoking introduced a large amount of carbon dioxide into the air, which was inspirated into the apparatus, and this introduced an error into the CO2 measurement. Second, inasmuch as some of the O2 had thus been removed from the air inspirated into the apparatus, the air should not then be accepted as 21% O2. Lastly was the fact, big question mark, that Joe inhaled so vigorously on his cigar that he reduced the atmospheric pressure in the room. So the measurements were off because of inaccurate barometric indicators. We all know that none of these arguments prevailed, and Joe still gives a cigar a good working over, smoking one end and chewing the other one for a meeting somewhere in the middle.
Joe referred to his former students as jewels, an allusion taken from the story of Cornelia, an impoverished Roman matron, who, upon being asked where were her jewels, pointed to her sons and said, "These are my jewels." Today, our alumni association is called the Jewels Club.
This says Joe Kofalt's Jewel Box and reluctant departure, and here are all the jewels leaving the box.
And they have a cigar, smoking a cigar, and a horse smoking a cigar.
The next slide, too, has a little comment about graduates. Is that supposed to be you, Joe?
Many years ago.
How about giving us a literal translation?
All right, it says, "The große Tag kommt." The big day comes. And the new chemical engineer is happy. Now he will have much gold.
The physical plant occupied by the College of Engineering as the 1950s began was not in good shape. After a 20-year period during which the nation experienced both a depression and world war, there was much catching up to do. A report issued in 1953 by Vice President Gordon Carson found that Chemie had less space than it did in 1925. Furthermore, what little space it did have was often unusable. The classrooms allocated to Chemie were apparently clustered around the heating system in McPherson Labs. Joe Kofalt reported witnessing the heat turn the asphalt tile in room 258 into a putty-like mass. State legislators were slow to respond. Nothing new here. The university sought $14 million in the 51-52 biennium for capital improvement. It received $1.2 million. Finally, a major building plan was launched by OSU in 1954, with an emphasis on chemistry and chemical engineering. After many years of wrangling and just as many broken dreams, the new chemical engineering building was about to become a reality. The groundbreaking took place in the early winter of 1958. I remember this day, but can't remember the date or faces, except for this rather distinguished gentleman with a tie. Both former chairs, Al Syverson and Joe, are in the picture, plus a number of our graduate students at the time. Construction of the new building did progress rapidly. The construction company used our building as leverage to relocate to Central Ohio from West Virginia, which was then in an economic slump. The new building was dedicated on May 5, 1960. It included, amongst many other facilities, a radioactive isotope storage pool in the basement for the Nuclear Engineering Division of the department. Just try to imagine such a thing nowadays. Unfortunately, there were not sufficient funds to completely replace all the equipment in McPherson Labs. As a result, much of the hardware from the old Unit Operations Lab was moved to the new building. In an interesting twist, this project became part of the Unit Ops Lab that summer. Each group was assigned a piece of equipment that they were responsible for breaking down, transporting, re-erecting, and finally running. To those in the know, moving the triple effect evaporator was a horrendous task. Using forklifts, cranes, and more than a bit of blood, sweat, and tears, the task was finally accomplished. A mainstay of the department for many years, numerous visiting alumni who considered it their nemesis are sorely disappointed to find that it was disposed of some time ago. Maybe they are disappointed that present students won't suffer as much as they did. Here is a list of early faculty members in chemical engineering. Contrary to what some have said, Harry Hershey, are you there? I did not know any of these gentlemen personally, except Joe, of course. Here are the faculty from the middle years with whom I've had the privilege of serving. Each has a story of their own, and since they are mostly gone now, I suppose I could say anything I want. But I won't, because they truly were wonderful colleagues to work with. Like the rest of the world, the use of computers has become a mainstay of chemical engineering. We would be remiss not to relate the history of computing in our department. In the old days, we were all equipped with portable computers. These were laptops, if you placed it on your lap. With some of the funds for the new building, we acquired our first modern computer lab, which was a bunch of reconditioned Marchant calculators, most of which were operated by using a hang crank mechanism. We could only afford a couple that had a motor that replaced the hand operation. In the early 1960s, using Heathkit homebrewed equipment, we established our first analog computing lab. The primary function was to teach kinetics and control. The new building featured a room specially constructed to house our second-generation commercial analog computers. We had 3 of these and an interface to tie the analog devices to digital systems. However, there was little available at that time in the newly developing area of digital-based computers. When the digital computer came of age, our first acquisition was a Ramo Woolridge system. It was donated by B.F. Goodrich and previously used by them for process control. It was one of the 2 that still existed at that time. The other went to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. It was less than an optimal system, was never generally used by us. The entire memory was about 9,000 words, most of which was fixed. Only about 2 of the 10 drum segments were programmable. Our first truly useful digital computer was a PDP-15 based on a dual computer concept. The concept, developed by Ed Free, was built by Digital Equipment Corporation. A smaller PDP gathered process data. The memory of this computer was shared by a larger PDP-15 used for the required number crunching. This is my Kukla. Much of the work involving the PDP-15 would have been difficult, if not impossible, to do without his technical skills and wire wrapping tool. He retired from the department after 34 years of service. In the early 1980s, we acquired a VEX 11780 computer, one of the first in Central Ohio. It replaced the PDP system, and we were able to introduce remote terminals in offices and in labs. This system was obtained by Bob Moeller, a faculty member at that time. It was maintained by Dave Jones, the guy on the left, who is still with us almost 20 years later. Al Syverson took over for Joe Kofalt in 1968. Al continued to maintain the reputation of the department, but in the middle 70s his health began to fail, and in 1976 he had to step down. The following year, Ed Herring was acting chair as the department searched for a permanent chairman. Now here's Jack.
I interviewed for the position and was very pleased and excited to receive an offer to start in the autumn of 1977. I knew Ohio State as being a very important player among the chemical engineering departments in the United States, and I was very proud to become a part of it. The department was short of faculty when I arrived, and over the next several years, recruiting of new faculty was a major priority for the department. With one exception, we hired a number of excellent, energetic young faculty with no academic experience. We looked for 3 criteria when we were recruiting new faculty. 1, strong potential for a successful research career. 2, a research background in areas in which we wish to strengthen the department. And 3, interest in and ability to teach students well and to help them in their career development. New research areas in chemical engineering were developing, and the department had to set priorities among them as to which areas we wanted to focus on. In some cases, we wanted to add depth, which meant that we couldn't cover many areas, as we were limited to only 12 or 13 faculty, the maximum that the department could support. Our first hire was L.S. Fan, who has developed a world-renowned research program in particle technology. L.S. is our current department chair, and his achievements were recognized by election to the National Academy of Engineering in 2000. The energy crisis was very serious in the 70s, and finding new ways to utilize coal was a very high national priority. Dwayne Skidmore, a coal expert at the University of West Virginia, was also hired in that first year. The department had had a polymer research and teaching program under the direction of Professor Emmy Lynn. When Emmy retired, Jim Lee was hired. Jim had a lot of industrial polymer experience. Under his leadership, our polymer research is now known worldwide. Later, Kurt Kelling, a polymer specialist, joined the faculty. In 1997, along with colleagues from other departments, they organized the NSF-sponsored Center for Advanced Polymer and Composite Engineering, a chemical engineering research area that is key to many industrial chemical processes is catalysis. In 1985, Umut Askan, our first full-time woman faculty member, joined the faculty. She built a program in research and teaching in catalysis, which has been supported by many national agencies and industry. Umut has also been a leader in professional societies and has received quite a few research and teaching awards. Recognizing the importance of the emerging biotechnology area, the department was fortunate to be able to hire two outstanding young researchers in this area, S.T. Young and Jeff Chalmers. They have been very successful in developing well-recognized and well-funded research programs and teaching courses in biotechnology. This is a highly interdisciplinary field, and they collaborate extensively with other disciplines, especially with food science, the medical school, and biomedical engineering. Bob Moeller and Jim Davis, who have left Ohio State, continue to teach our process control courses. Jim's research focused on artificial intelligence. In 1993, Bhavik Bakshi, whose interests are in systems engineering, joined the faculty. Bhavik's research has also had national and international impacts. Separations has always been a vital area in industrial processes and in our curriculum. Kent Knebel joined the faculty in the early 80s and developed a very strong research program in pressure swing absorption. When he left to form his own company, David Tomasco was hired, and he brought with him his expertise in supercritical separations. David's research has blossomed and now extends to pharmaceutical and polymer applications. Another important research area that we filled was surface science and colloids with the hiring of Jim Rathman. Jim was our first faculty member to receive the Outstanding Teaching Award from the university. Later, David Tomasco also received that award. In addition to their research strengths, the young faculty had strong commitments to teaching students and to help them develop professionally. They continued the department tradition of winning a disproportionate number of College of Engineering teaching awards. And in 1977, the department as a whole received the University Department Teaching Excellence Award. This was only the second year in which that award was given by the university. The faculty were very productive in their research and won a disproportionate number of research awards from the College of Engineering. They also had a high number of refereed publications, among the top 10% among the departments of chemical engineering in the United States. In 1994, after 17 years as department chair, I took a sabbatical as a senior Fulbright research fellow at the Technion in Haifa, Israel, and L.S. Fan took over as department chair.
During the 1980s, many women entered the program. In fact, the percentage of female undergraduates in Chemie hovers around 35%, which is typically the highest of any department in the entire College of Engineering. This statistic, no doubt, has also had a positive effect on our recruitment of male chemies and the retention of certain faculty members. Our current chair is L.S. Fan. L.S. announced his plans to step down as chair last year, and the department is actively searching for his replacement.
I joined the faculty in 1978, and I was extremely honored to succeed Professor Jack Zacking in 1994 as the 5th department chair. During my tenure, I have had the pleasure of appointing 4 faculty members to the department. Assistant Professor Isamu Kusaka joined the faculty in year 2000 from Caltech after 2 years of postdoctoral research at the University of Chicago. He brought to the department theoretical strength in statistical mechanics and nucleation. 2 world-renowned senior professors' appointments were also made. In 1997, Professor Marty Feinberg from University of Rochester was appointed as the Richard Moreau Chair. Marty is the leading authority in reaction network theory. He was the John von Neumann Lecturer in Theoretical Biology at the Institute for Advanced Study in 1997, the only engineer so honored. University Distinguished Center for Material Research Scholar Professor Winston Ho joined us in 2002 from University of Kentucky. Winston is a leading authority in membrane technology. He was elected to the National Academy of Engineering in 2002. The department expanded its state-of-the-art research in a large number of contemporary fields. This research effort is now at the level of over $7 million per year. Faculty research is balanced between traditional experimental programs and the theoretical programs. Molecular-based state-of-the-art areas in biological science and engineering, molecular thermodynamics, supercritical fluids, surfactants self-assembly, and the computational chemistry are just a few of the specific areas. Faculty research accomplishments have been recognized by many prestigious awards and include memberships in the National Academy of Engineering, 7 College of Engineering McQuitt Teaching Awards, 5 Harrison Awards for Excellence in Engineering Education for junior faculty, and 3 Scott Awards for Excellence in Engineering Education for senior faculty are a testament to a long-standing priority of the department in serving its students first. The annual Bill Lowry Lectureship was initiated in 1995 for the purpose of recognizing a chemical engineering colleague for outstanding research and professional accomplishments. The lectureship was established in honor of a distinguished alumnus, Bill Lowry, the former president of Amoco Corporation. The Lowry lecturers have been John Davidson of University of Cambridge, Bill Showalter of University of Illinois, Jimmy Way of Princeton University, Bob Langer of MIT, Judd Keene of University of California at Berkeley, Royal Jackson of Princeton University, and Alex Bell of University of California at Berkeley. The outstanding accomplishments of our alumni are shown by the very large number of Lamont medals received. The Lamont Medal is the highest award of the College of Engineering. Over 40% of the Lamont Medal recipients in the past 40 years are chemical engineers. During the last 10 years, alumni recipients include Tom Henready, Frank Scholl, and Larry Jarrett. As the department moves into its second century, the direction of the chemical engineering profession is changing. The department is on the verge of changing its name to the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering to reflect the growing importance of biology as one of the foundation science requirements in our discipline. We believe we have positioned ourselves to pursue future areas of opportunity, including bioengineering and nanotechnology, as well as continuing to maintain excellence in many other traditional research areas. With the continued support of the department by loyal alumni and an institutional commitment for a new chemical engineering wing and the renovation of COFO Laboratory to take place in 2008 through 2009, along with a significant faculty expansion with existing resources. The department is well positioned and prepared to ensure continued excellence in the future. Thank you very much.
Well, that about takes us up to the present day. Here's a shot of our current faculty at a recent retreat. I won't say much about them. Unlike the targets of my previous comments, these guys are still around. They might say something about me. The university atmosphere has changed considerably from the earlier days. There were only a few genuine researchers on the staff back then. The rest had a token research program, but were dedicated primarily to teaching and service. This doesn't fly anymore. In today's research-oriented universities, each of these people is a true researcher and teacher, many of whom have received the highest teaching awards. They all have outstanding research programs. The proof of any department is in the caliber of its students. Over 5,000 chemical engineers have graduated from OSU in the first 100 years. Many of them have gone on to distinguished careers, becoming leaders in industry. As we turn the clock on a new century of chemical engineering at Ohio State, which of these will become the leaders of the future?